Another week and another chance to bitch about how Toqger is the weak spot in this block. Yeah, hi. Week of May 22nd, so that's Toqger 13, Garo, Makai Flower number 7, and of course, Gaim 30. Let's see. I'm trying to phrase this accurately because Wright's an asshole. Some things I should cover before I get to that, though. Toqger's ratings have been reported again, and they're holding about 3.7% over... Kyoryuger had a bit less than that, and let's not even get to Go Busters. So it's improving, but I noticed that on the breakdown of each episode, the ones I complained about the most tended to have the lower scores, whereas the one I praised all had, or at least had good things about them, had it. So I'm not saying that I'm right in my analysis. I'm saying that the ones where I have more to complain about tended to end up having lower views. I'm seeing it as an odd correlation. Gaim, however, is in the 5 percentile and up with most of its episodes. So it's continuing my point that tell a good story and the people will come to you. And it's this recurring problem with television and movies that you think they can get away with the stupidest story possible, and you think it's right, you think it's great immediately, but then it starts picking at you the farther after you see it, all of these problems, and then you get the people who become the staunch defenders of the suck. So, this relates back to my Shinta Hates Godzilla 3-parter vlog, in that I was probably a bit harsh, but people have backed up all of my criticisms at this point. Most of them. I think I'm the only one that really knew enough about the fallacies with the nuke explosion and a bunch of the other things that just make absolutely no sense when you think about it. But regardless, I like to know that I'm consistent, not just with popular opinion, but that my criticisms hold weight. And seeing that, while I've mainly praised Gaim, there are pitfalls in the ones where they have kind of issues, and with Toqger, it's... I still don't think the show is worse than Kyoryuger, but I can see where some of them are coming from with this. But the thing... Wright's an asshole. The show's shown that they're not as much idiots, but ridiculously naive, probably not helped by the amnesia that stuck their mental development back in adolescence. But, I should also mention something about translations. See, Wright's name, Raito, R-A-I-T-O, made up of the characters Ra, I, and To. Now, the Japanese language has this thing in its relation to English, in that sometimes you have similar sounding names, and if you know anything about Japanese television, they like not double entendres, things and names that have multiple meanings. The reason I get so upset about the Sengoku translating as warring or warring states period is because Ryoma Sengoku's last name of Sengoku is not spelled warring, it's spelled extreme. Thus, it's wordplay. That's the phrase, wordplay. And that's what it gets... That's why Azir subs irritate me so. They completely miss this and translate the name. You can't translate names or you get this misconception. And this is another case where we thought right was going to be as in right-handed, but Raito can also translate as light. Light Yagami from Death Note. His name in Japanese is Raito. And similarly, in Kamen Rider Double, Philip was named Raito Sonozaki, because he's both the right side of Double, and he is the light of the Sonozaki family and the light of the Gaia memory. This is that not double entendre, that's euphemism. This is that wordplay coming into effect. And the thing we didn't realize, and the translators have yet to realize about this, is with the darkness thing, with the shadow line and the Emperor of Darkness being... With the shadow line being absolute darkness and Zeto being of the darkness but obsessed with the light and sparkling, his name takes on a new connotation. He is the light that the Emperor of Darkness is obsessed with. He is the light of the rainbow line versus the darkness that is Zeto. And yes, I'm still using Zeto, not Zed, because if they were going to do the Zed reference, they would spell his name Zedo, with a D sound, not a T sound. Ugh. I'm not even a licensed translator, and I've only been really doing the subs thing for 2-3 years, and I know this stuff. I mean, I took Japanese classes in high school, and that was... I had the last class on that 9 years ago, and I know this. I know this stuff. And I know it really should not irritate me as much as it does, but it does because these people... There's this they're popularizing these misconceptions, and it's why I ultimately do not care for fan subs, but since most of the stuff I watch is fan subs, I have to point it out when I can. It's why I ended up redoing the Black RX subs so completely, even though less wrong. I don't have a mastery of the Japanese language, but what I do, I'm a bit neurotic about. And that's why I think names should not be translated. They should be left as they are, because then you get this kind of crap. You can kind of fudge it with the devices a bit, I guess, but it's irritating, and of course, it's not going to be brought up by anybody else, so I might as well bring it up. Anyways, onto the actual subject matter, Right being an asshole. So they get to a new station, and they learn... Actually, I need to go a bit back from that. The episode opens with them using Chotokyo to battle a bunch of monsters, and the constant use of Chotokyo is putting severe strain on the Reshas, so if they continue doing it, they're going to break down. So they have to put the main trains on repair, and I actually like this. It's been regularly used in recent series that they almost immediately go for the most powerful combination they have at the moment. So, like, as the series progresses, they forget that they get more and more equipment, and they forget to use it. So, and it doesn't work for every series. Like Go Busters, they were stuck with 1 mech, and then 3 mechs, and then 5 mechs, and then a 6th mech that could sub in for the 1st mech. But the problem there was the weakest of the mechs usually got the ability to kill anything it wanted. In fact, there was a showcased episode where it was a Star Wars test that it had to fight off every single giant mech the opposing sides had fielded against them, and several of them had wrecked the base mech, Go Buster Ace, several times without any upgrades. So that one ultimately felt like bad writing. There was a lot of bad writing in Go Busters. Anyways, my point is, the Super Combiner mechs, the Ultrazord mechs, become more and more used as the series progresses, and instead of making it an 11th hour superpower kind of thing. Now, the original Power Rangers tempered this perfectly because they didn't always have access. Because they didn't use all of the footage in order, they could temper when they used it, like introduce it earlier in the season, and then you spread out its use it sparingly, kind of like that. So that is actually a proponent for the adaptation in this case, in that they didn't automatically go for doing things in order. Now, they did that eventually as production blocks got scheduled and they could only do so much per season, because initially, they restructured what times the original Power Rangers run. So the third season had only 40 episodes, and it ran almost back-to-back with seasons 2 and Zeo. So instead of having, we have most of the series, they're wrapping up right now, so we know what they'll be using, so we can know what we can use in the show. It was like, oh no, we only have a few weeks to advance warning due to a few months advance warning on what they're doing. So, in a way, that's kind of better with the... I know I'm about to praise this current Saban production block, but having the series you're adapting completed allows you to know what you can do with the footage. Now, because Zacher and the current Power Rangers production team are kind of incompetent, they don't use what they have available to them. But in theory, that is a better thing. To, wait 6 months to have it run as it's completing, or to know far in advance what you're going to be able to do. I like that. I do. It's just that it frustrates me when they don't. Anyways, back to point. The rushes are breaking down because of the overuse of Cho-Tokyo, which was mainly off-screen. So they have to while this will be tempered eventually, because the conductor, tickets, and wagon just need to reconfigure and reinforce the rushes, because Cho-Tokyo was somehow unplanned, even though it's on all the consoles for the system. Yeah, because it was an unplanned transformation, they need to fix up the rushes to be able to support it, so they're not going to be able to combine in Cho-Tokyo for a bit. So finding new support Resha is a priority, along with fighting the Shadow Line. Now, this causes the main conflict of the episode, in that Miyu is focused on defeating the Shadow Kaijin of the week, which is based on a magnifying lens, and Wright is not focused on the Resha. He's focused on getting something to eat in this town to find all its delicacies. And when the Resha, when the monster do it, he doesn't even prioritize the Resha. He says he's going to go get something to eat, and then stumbles over his words and says, "Oh no, I'm going to find the Resha." And eventually this does work out, but it's never stated that splitting their attention because they need this, but they need to fight the Kaijin. It's never stated. It's like he's abandoning them for this other thing. He's not giving emphasis on doing their job. And the way it seems extremely condescending, especially towards Miyu, as this is a Miyu-focused episode. And here's ultimately why I don't like this one, as it's character growth driven by someone else's actions. It's a Miyu-focused episode, in that she's being the responsible one, while Wright's being the irresponsible one, and I'm trying to phrase this correctly. And then she gets a memory snippet, oh, don't we love those, of Wright saying, saying something to the effect of, "Yeah, I'll do this while you do this for me." And that's not exactly accurate to how it happened in the show, but it's what I keep getting out of it, in that Wright is this charismatic personality and gathered these four together, except in different ways, they're all better than him. They would be better off without him. We saw that last episode in how they had those careers, which could likely be what they do in reality had they not fallen into the Shadowline stuff, and they're actually adults and had not had memories been erased. But and yeah, it's pretty much. I liked the last episode because it's criticism with what's wrong with Wright. He's living in a fantasy. He's living in this imaginary world, and he's not moving on. Now, this hits me. That last episode hit me because sometimes I feel like that's the situation with Wright, not able to move on childish pursuits. And in my case, I can't get a job, and this is pretty much all I have. And point is that it was not framed correctly. Wright ultimately turns out to be correct in that they needed this Resha to deal with the Kaijin, but he could not have known that in advance, so it still comes off as him being this irresponsible jackass for not seeming to care about stopping these monsters. And the thing about the magnifying glass thing is they also showcased how that its powers can be used to... You ever tried to burn an ant with a magnifying glass? You ever tried to burn anything with a magnifying glass? It's apparently made much easier. You can set things on fire if it's painted black, or if it's colored black, and... Irony! Yeah, and so pretty much it's the stupidest Kaijin, yeah, but its idiocy is a disguise for its plan in that he's having the Shadowliner mooks, the Kuros, painting things so he can then set them ablaze. Kind of a roundabout way to do it, but it's good to dissolute. It made good use of deception that it makes it. He made himself seem incompetent and harmless, so they won't take him seriously. And then, oh no, I'm about to set some buildings on fire. That I thought was kind of good. And yeah, that is ultimately the problem. I can only get behind 2, maybe 3 characters, and not even consistently, because they keep being pushed to the side of these idiots. I mean, Tokati's only an idiot in that he has book smarts, but he can't really apply himself, so he comes off as a bit of a doofus. Kagura's like swaying between timid and whatever delusion powers she can come up with, and as I said, Wright's an idiot and an asshole. And Miyu's, I want to say flighty in that she's responsible, but she's not a pack leader. She's like that annoying class rep that will make you do things, but kind of think, didn't they say she was a class rep at some point? And she's like sporty and not exactly the best with social situations, so she gets pushed to the back. And Hikari's similarly shy in that he's the most brilliant person in the room, but doesn't like to take charge when he doesn't have to. He's introverted. That's ultimately half the team's problem. Their introverted personalities versus this extrovert. And there's nothing wrong with being either as long as it's tempered. And the extremes are all over the place with this show. So, Wright gets to the Resha. It's the Fire Resha, which they take to be the Extinguisher Resha, because firemen and fire engines don't actually set things on fire. They're meant to respond to emergencies involving fire, and they put out the fire. Now, for a little kid, unless you explain it, you think that, oh no, the firemen are going to set things on fire. That actually happened in a book. I'm trying to remember the name of the book. Fahrenheit 451. That's the burning temperature of books. And in that one, everything was censored. In that book, everything was censored so that any person who considered himself a fan of literal novels, that they had their stuff and sometimes themselves burned to death. And because everything was censored, you had all these things which occupy your intelligence, your brain, to pretty much rot it out. And you had the firemen in that book, actually setting these fires, being responsible for destroying knowledge. And it's a contrast, I guess, to how firemen actually work. I guess it was kind of a precursor to the information age where you end up being stupid because you're assaulted by all these things that take up your brain. Now, my brain actually works better with some type of distraction to delude the part of my brain that gets bored so I can work on stuff. It's why I have something playing in the background when I'm writing, when I'm editing. I can't do it with anything I'm actively working to take notes on, but that works out because my brain is occupied both with taking the notes and viewing whatever I'm covering, so it works out that way. And that was kind of the criticism that was being laid in that book, in wondering if, with all this information flooding us, how stupid we become. In my opinion, networking has just merely allowed people to show how stupid they really are versus being able to hide it because you don't know them personally. And, anyways, they get the fire Russia working and put out the fires. And this is actually a decent idea for a support Russia, because there are a lot of freaking train lines in Japan. So a mobile train-based fire support system, that would make sense. Or hell, in a limited capacity, since most of the train lines in Japan are raised or below ground. So it's not like in America where you could put a train wheel connectors on the fronts of vehicles so they could express through the metro system in some cities. So it doesn't exactly work, but it works in this situation to put out the flames in the local area, because trains do everything in this series. And Miyu, Takadi, and Hikari take care of the monster. It grows, and they combine it with Diesel into 2 attachments for the arms. One, and of course, it's thermal hands, in that the left hand is the extinguisher of fires, and the right hand can set them on fire. Yeah, puns, of course. And in the wrap-up, Kagura starts off in her tangent of maybe Right was all along, and then he shows immediately that he's not. I hate Right. Anyways, Gaim this week was subverted due to advertise the new Kikaider movie. Now, we're in the middle of a story arc right now with Gaim between 29 and 31, and this just fell at the absolute worst time, because this is the unveiling of the Kiwami Lock Seed, the forbidden fruit, and that's not happening until next week, 2 weeks from now. It's at least being showcased as existing next week. Except the fight for it started a week ago, or the episode preceding this, and it even says at the beginning of the episode, this happens 2 weeks ago. This happens before this story arc started. So why not move it a week back in the production cycle? Make it episode 29. You still get the advertisement for the movie, which isn't coming out for Actually, it's coming out in a few days. So, crap. Yeah, the timeline doesn't work out at all, even if you move it a bit with relation to it, since it's better advertising to have the week before. And I get the marketing side. I just don't get how it fits in that well into the story to say, this happened 2 weeks ago, reshuffle it when you play these episodes again. Anyways, Kota comes across the android Jiro, and oh boy, was this full of mistakes. I ended up watching this episode twice, but because I really wanted to see how this started, and Kikaider does not translate as machine, and that's pretty much my big thing here, and that this is a TV Nihon mistake. They got it right throughout the rest of the episode. It's just that Kikaider just started off in the episode early being used wrong. And anyways, Gaim, Kota finds Jiro, which is a robot android. Yeah, that's redundant. Androids are robots. Finds the android Jiro paused, and something happened to blank or make his read access memory inaccessible. So he's got this blinking reboot hologram lock on his back, which will end up wiping his memory, but allowing him to re-access what he previously had locked out. So pretty much most of the episode is Kota bonding with Jiro, and ultimately having him learn the importance of being able to protect people, like Kota learned from his senior writers, like Haruto. I actually went over this last week in that Kota really gets his drive to protect people from that encounter with Haruto and the armored version of him. The Bujin version of him, sorry. And this is him passing on the will to the next inheritor, or the supposed inheritor. And we get some wonky things in this, in that it's mentioned, there's made mention of a legendary hero, in that this is a Kikaider legacy, in that he is not the first Kikaider, he is just another in the series. Because we've already known, there are... In preparation for the Kikaider movie, I recently watched the Kikaider animated series, the Kikaider the Animation. I have a review going up for it in July. But there are multiple Kikaider robots. There's the basic one, Jiro, Kikaider, just Kikaider, and there's the prototype, Kikaider Zero, which is no emotion, and Kikaider 01, which is aggressive emotion. Now, thing is, they're acknowledged as existing in the Toei continuity, the grand Toei continuity. It was made that way by the movie Let's Go Kamen Rider. I hate that movie, but it's in continuity. Sort of. I hate the O's movies, because they keep doing this. But yeah, it's acknowledged that Kikaider exists in the grand overarching Toei continuity that also covers the Metal Heroes, Super Sentai, and Kamen Rider. They're all in the same continuity. They have been since Decade. It's established. And so that means that all this information they have about Kikaiders includes this one. So it's the latest in the Kikaider series of androids, and this is why this reboot doesn't quite work, in that they're pretty much setting up the exact same thing, even though that already happened. It's like the Inazuman thing from Movie War Ultimatum with Force and Wizard all over again, in that Inazuman makes his appearance, is reborn in this new era, except the Inazuman already exists. So is this history repeating itself, or is it retcon? Is it reboots? I don't know, but it bugs me because it's something that's already been established. Anyways, Ryoma Sengoku has connections to the evil organization from the Kikaider series. Evil Organization Dark. Yeah, the organization is just dark. It's not an acronym, it's not an anagram, it is just the organization is dark. And now you know where the Shadow Line got it. This is actually a recurring thing in several Japanese series. Hell, the villain from a series called Might Gaim is named Black Noir. Black. Now you know where the Shadow Line got it. Anyways, Ryoma Sengoku is sent the Hakaider android. Hakaider operates by having a living brain placed in it as a hostage. Yeah. Guess what Ryoma does? He transplants his own brain into the robot. It's still a robot when you're just a brain. It's not a cyborg if it's just a brain. You have a robot body. You can't move without the robot body. It's different than having cybernetic replacement limbs or implants. It's pretty much the percentage you can still be a cyborg without being a robot with organic parts is iffy. Some say 50, some say 75, but once you're to the point where you're just a brain, you stop being a cyborg. You end up being a robot body. Anyways, he tries out the Hakaider android body for himself because there is no reason. It's just to have Hakaider in the crossover because Hakaider is popular. Sorry, my computer's doing stuff. In parallel, I really need to find the movie Mechanical Violator Hakaider, which is a Hakaider standalone movie, I should say, because it doesn't relate in any way to anything Hakaider related, aside from the character. Anyways, so he ends up causing havoc while this Inves is assaulting things. So, yeah, Koto transforms and helps Jiro learn the meaning of protecting people, and eventually it leads to Jiro allowing him to press the reboot button, which blanks his current active memory to retrieve his other memories. And Hakaider transforms, switch on, and I gotta say, I like the redesign of Hakaider. It makes his, Hakaider is half blue and half red. Blue on the right side, red on the left side. It's pretty much the inverse coloring to heat trigger from Kamen Rider Double, his heat trigger form. The reason that is the blue is considering his morality, and the red is offering his darker impulses. And they contrast this a bit more than the original suit by making the left side more jagged and malevolent. It's like he has claws on his left hand where it's normal robot fingers on his right side. So it's more contrasting this duality of nature that is the central conflict of Kikaider's consciousness. And yeah, that went really well. Gaim went Kachidoki to fight off both that Inves and Hakaider. Now, this was a good thing for the Hakaider stuff in that it establishes these robots' power levels. As Zack fights the Ryoma-controlled Hakaider robots, and he gets wrecked. Kota fights it. He gets wrecked until he goes Jimba. So these androids are already on the Energy Rider tier of power. Hell, there's even a small bit with Ryoma testing his Hakaider capabilities. He not only wrecks the mass production Kurokage troopers, he wrecks several Suika arms, and Suika is the giant power armor lock seed. So we know, and before, we know that Kachidoki arms can destroy multiple Suika arms simultaneously. We know that the Energy Riders can take on one Suika power armor and deal with it eventually after a long battle. So we know Hokkaido's at least on the tier of the Energy Riders, which also establishes for them how strong Hokkaido has to be a thorn in the side. I would want to say Hokkaido on his base state is a little above an Energy Rider, but still weaker than Kachidoki, if that makes any sense. Granted, he's limited by the Gemini system and being a bit damaged through most of the episode, but it's good to know where things stand when you do a crossover like this. Because, like I said way back, one Kamen Rider is a bit outclassed by the average team of Sentai, and you can only equal that by using higher tier powers versus a team that is pretty much locked in what they can do to the base form. Most of the time, we're not counting Super Rangers in this establishment. So this pretty much stays consistent with that, in that whole cross-franchise power tier system. Anyways, after the fight with the reboot happens, and while Jiro gets his memories back, he lost his entire experience with Kota, and most of the episode is actually taken up by antics which are kind of comedic, in that Kota's sister Akira, who's I've previously stated to be a bit of a condescending personality, to put it nicely, and it was nice to see her in this actually nicer, more considerate role, because through it, Kota and Jiro are treating it like Jiro's a lost puppy. They even put up that parallel in that Kota, as a kid, rescued a puppy and named it Jiro, but had to give it up. So it's life illusion, I could say. Overall, it's not up to the standard I expect from Gaim, but it's not exactly bad. I think the weakest parts were the attempts at comedy and Ryoma Sengoku putting his brain in a robot even though he has no reason to. I'm going to pause this just Anyways, Garo. Garo established a few other things for me in that what happened to the original series protagonist, Koga, or is it Taiga? I've heard of both ways. In that we learned how Raiga got the, we know how Raiga got the Garo armor, it's inherited, but we saw more of how he, was an inheritor of it. See, his parents, the main characters from the main series, whose names escape me because I still have yet to watch it, disappeared when he was a kid. And so he was just left with Goza, who's the butler. Which pretty much makes Raiga Batman. A nicer Batman, but of course. Anyways, he went through the trials of becoming Garo to both pay respect and continue his family's legacy, and there's this flashback where he learns that his parents are still alive, and because there's this whole flashback scene of him becoming Garo, where the people in charge of granting the title of Garo can't give him the Garo armor because the Garo armor is still active. They end up... It's kind of bad dialogue, I guess, in this scene, because we cannot grant you the armor of Garo. Why? Because the armor of Garo is still active. That means my father's alive. We just received word from your father. We are giving you the Garo armor. But then he can't use it. We know that. He told us to do this. Where is he? We don't know. He's in another dimension. It's inconsistent writing for that scene. Inconsistent acting. I like it because it explains why we can't see him, and in universe sense why we never see two sets of the same armor team up. It's preceded, however, by Raiga learning that he's absorbed too much horror life energy, horror ki, and this builds up naturally in the process of being a Makai Knight. And so he has to go get it purified, and then he has the whole flashback scene. But the key of it is, he has killed 99 horrors. And over the course of the episode, he's attacked by another one out of nowhere. That makes it his 100th. Apparently when Makai Knights achieve a certain number of kills of horrors, they are allowed access to new powers after undergoing a trial. Thing is, the horror that takes focus for the week, Zen something, I'm bad with names, is trying to kill off the Garo line. And he does this by taking him into a shadow realm. Now, it's not stated to be a shadow realm, but the monster is taken to be darkness. And normally, the process for getting these powers involves a trial against someone's inner darkness. Raiga is kind of a happy-go-lucky person. He's not super serious, so he's not a person that would exactly have a powerful inner darkness, because he accepts things and tries to find the brighter side. So this is the illusion that leads to his trial, and this monster that's trying to directly kill him. And this one has not just dimension manipulation powers like normal horrors or occasional horrors do. This one can stop time and create up barriers of these time pockets so that, like say when he first appears, he blasts Raiga so he loses his sword. So Raiga has to find him barehanded and only kills the first of the multiple time duplicate horrors because he's uses his environments. And there are actually a lot of fights in this one, and each of them are uniquely done. The first one is the first one against the non-Zen whatever horror is the standard Garo fight you see practically every episode. The second one is full base form, no weapon, martial arts fights, and only wins by using the environment to his advantage. Second fight starts off as normal, but because the Zen horror monster has a clawed right hand and is holding a sword in his left hand, he's outpowered because, two weapons, effectively. So he has to not only use his normal sword, but he has to use the sheath to help him guard. And then in the final fight is where he actually kills the same horror twice without ever equipping his Garo armor. And the third one, which is mostly CGI, is... Okay, I don't want to say the CGI for this is bad, but it's pretty obvious it's CGI. Now, CGI these days is actually kind of good. It's another one of my complaints about the new Godzilla movie, in that most of the scenes where they have the CGI monsters, you can't see the CGI monsters. Now, I was in a gigantic movie theater, so you can make out details on a giant screen as it's illuminated. I couldn't make out shit. I couldn't make out anything of those fights. And, well, yeah, I would say it's more obvious to be an illusion if it's well lit. You don't care if they've established a type of suspension of disbelief. And with this one, well, it's obvious it's CGI and computer graphics and them not really there. It's how they framed it that makes it superior. In that this is an alternate reality, this is a world controlled by the horror, so when you equip the stuff, it's going to more mimic this unreality feel, because this isn't reality, this isn't happening in reality, but the threat is. And that is how you do it. You frame it so that it works in context of what you're watching. It's also my complaint with the CGI trains, in that you have the models, and then it's so obvious when they're doing this stuff that doesn't make any sense. But that's Toqger. Anyways, the power he's unlocked from this trial is Golren. It's a horse. It's a golden armored mechanical horse. And he uses it to kill the Zen something. I suck at names. It's apparently something that was introduced in something or other. I really need to watch Garo. I know I really need to watch Garo. Stop telling me I really need to watch Garo. I am watching Garo. I'm just not starting from the first series. I want to go back and watch the first series. I don't have the time. So yeah, he kills the monster in badass fashion with the horse, and very badass line delivery, and overall good. It's moving the character forward, showing that he has the right to wear the armor while acknowledging that the legacy he is an inheritor of, acknowledging what happened to the previous wearer and aka the protagonist for the first two Garo series. Overall, very good, acknowledging continuity, acknowledging struggles, and having the standard fight scene, even though it's not important to the overarching plot. This is how you do character development. This is how you do character establishment. This is what I want from this kind of... While Makai no Hana is probably not going to be the best tokusatsu series I've ever seen, it is continuing to impress me with how well it is presented, how well it was written. It's an adult tokusatsu series. It is a tokusatsu series meant for an older audience than Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, which are usually directed at young adults but are friendly for kids. Kamen Rider is directed at the young adult pre-teen bracket, like 7 to 14, but is friendly for those below and above it. Super Sentai is technically the next bracket down, but applies to those same areas, and it frustrates me in that, due to misconception, it is kids show fair to most everybody else. And yeah, it is directed at kids, but there's a difference between a demographic that is younger and kids show. I mean, you don't expect anything from Dora the Explorer. That's a kids show. But you do expect something from the DC animated universe. It's also a kids show, technically. It's just that it's becoming an insult over the years, especially because all of these older people don't outgrow it. They can still take fun and nostalgia in these things, except they expect more out of it. And the best series are you can go back to them and get the exact same thing, just with new understandings. And that's kind of part of the reason why I do this. That I'm trying to get money, in that it's allowing people to see all these things from an adult light and show that even though even though younger people are the ones it's directed at, it's still good for anyone else. The good ones, at least. Gaim is excellent. It has an overarching theme of growing up and responsibility and all this stuff. Well, in contrast, Toqger's kids are great message. Kids are great. Act like a juvenile asshole. Yeah, that's the theme of Toqger. And why I really do not like the series, even when it's had good episodes, and why I don't think this is the Car Ranger effect model all over again. It's directing at the wrong demographics and not understanding why people don't watch. So, oh no, we'll get on to the next youngest audience. But they'll leave you when you do this again. I'm ranting now. Toqger, yeah, bad. Gaim, not up to standards, but for setting up the Kikaider movie, I'll give it a buy. Garo, not as fun as the movie episode, but for fans of the whole Garo franchise, I think it would be a higher benchmark, because you get things established on what happened to the people you followed before. And next week we're finally getting the Kiwami Lock Seed. Next week we're getting another support Resha. And next week we have potential cannibalism. Then again, it's Garo. You expect somebody to be eaten in almost every episode. See you next week.